We can do discovery by going and having conversations with customers, doing that very qualitative work. We can do discovery through A/B testing. We can do discovery through Wizard of Oz tests. I think David Bland defines 44 different experiments in testing business ideas. These are all ways of doing discovery.
Hey, welcome, Phil, to this new episode of ProdCamp Podcast, where we will talk about a very, very important topic for you at Talking Roadmap and for product people, which are Talking Roadmap is your podcast and for product people is your company. And the topic of today is a very important topic for you and for us at ProdCamp, because we will blend in product discoveries and roadmap, and we'll talk about these two topics. And we'll try to see how they interconnect. I'm very happy to have you, Phil. Today, you are a great specialist and expert in product management. And I will let you introduce yourself because you will do it much better than me. Please tell us about yourself.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah. I'm a product coach, and I guess I'm a coach in that I'm a player turned coach. So I used to do product management. I used to lead product organizations. And a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to help more people than just the people in my company. And I found it a higher leverage activity. So now I'm out as a coach, helping lots of organizations, as you say, through a podcast, through coaching, and some workshops, do some training, do some speaking as well. And I even started writing a book a few months ago, and it's called It Depends, which is the classic answer that every product manager gives to every question, all about decision making.
Love it. Great title, great work. I mean, like a lot of things going on for you, Phil. So it's really great. And today, very important topic for product people to be able to understand how they can move from insight to action, and how to make actually all this high-flying theory come to the truth. And I love in this perspective the title of your book, because it depends is most of the time what we hear when we hear about decision making, even being fueled by product discovery and user discovery. So, Phil, let's get started. You often say it's very important for teams to deliver value to customers and to the business, right? And if you had to choose one thing for product people or founders to get really good at, would it be learning from users? And yes, no, and why or why not?
You mentioned three different types of value there in that conversation. In that one question, you mentioned customer value, business value, and user value. And the point is, I can't pick between those three because all three go together. Now, the customer, the person who pays for it, and if you're in B2C, they're also the user most of the time. But if you're in B2B, they're often separate. And if you're not delivering value for the customer, they're not going to buy it. If they're not delivering value for the user, then they're not going to keep using it, which means the customer will stop buying it. And if you're not delivering value for your business, then you're going to go out of business. So you've got to capture all three. Actually, it's probably building that deep empathy and figuring out a way to deliver value for them whilst also delivering value for yourself. It's that balance that is the key thing, I think, for everyone. Now, a couple of years ago, you could get away with less business value for a while. Free money times. Then you could focus more and more on growth and assume the money was coming down the line. You were going to make the money and the VCs would keep funding you. You can't do that anymore. Profitable growth is the order of the day today. And so you've got to really find that balance point. There is no real other option.
Right, I absolutely agree, and there's a big change in the way we should think about things, and even the way we can expect money to get back to us at some point in time in the future. Right, today it's much harder to count on that, and the VC money stopped floating as well. Come back to the question maybe, and still talk to you a bit about it. Isn't listening to users and being able to grasp really how their needs evolve and keep the pulse on that all the time the best way to actually get to a place where you find this balance you were describing, right, in terms of impact?
So let's take it up a level. I'm going to say discovery is the best way. And discovery is a broader church than just listening to users. So discovery to me covers the 4 primary risks. It covers value. Does a customer give a damn about it? Does it deliver value to them? Usability, which I generally broadly equate to user value. Viability, which I'm going to equate to business value. And feasibility of, can we build it in a way that we can make money from it, i.e. at a reasonable cost? And discovery deals with all of those things. There's words in Agile like spike. A spike is just a feasibility discovery activity. It's writing some code, it's building something to do discovery work. We can do discovery by going and having conversations with customers, doing that very qualitative work. We can do discovery through A/B testing. We can do discovery through Wizard of Oz tests. I think David Bland defines 44 different experiments in testing business ideas. These are all ways of doing discovery. Alberto Savoia talks about the prototype in The Right Thing. It's another way of thinking about discovery. Ultimately, it's about understanding the customer, business, and user needs to make sure that we can get there. And that's all that discovery is. It's this mythical term, but in real simple terms, it's doing activities that help us understand, to help us make decisions.
Love it. You took it away. You expanded our limits on the way you looked at discovery overall. Love it. You've often talked about how having limits can make us more creative. I've come across you saying that a few times, I think even on socials. And since product people, I think, feel there's never enough time to learn and do discovery and learn from users, can you tell us maybe about a situation you found a smart way to learn from users with limited time, and how did you manage it? Any tricks?
Well, let's start with a really simple philosophical thing. Discovery should be an order of magnitude faster than building the thing. If it's not, you're doing it wrong. And therefore, there should always be time for discovery. If it's not an order of magnitude faster, then you're doing too much work to figure it out. Discovery is not about removing all uncertainty. It's about managing risk. It's about figuring out how much risk are we prepared to carry. And that constraints that I talk about is usually the context. Like, we are going as an organization this direction, not that direction. We can use this technology, not that technology. We work within constraints. We've got certain financial runway. We've got certain limits on us. We're free to use certain colors on our website. That's a constraint because the designer is going to have decided that, and it's part of our brand. These are all constraints. They stop us having this unlimited set of things. But to go to a really simple example, to go concrete like you asked, a product I was working on years ago was one where it was plugged into cars to retrieve vehicle data, used in various industries like the insurance industry, etc. Every time one of the team traveled somewhere, we would hire a car. Every time we hired a car, we plugged into it. Every time we hired a car, we had a chat with the people at the workshop, the dealership there. And so we turned that everyday travel experience into a discovery experience where we're getting that benefit. And that wasn't just the product team. That was every leader within the organization. Like my boss and the business unit head, they were doing the same things. And so we were gathering all those insights through those simple interactions.
Love it. Great example. And you nailed it. Discovery is faster. We should make the time for it because this is the best way we have to manage risk and take decision without building actually something and spending the money to do so. So love it really. On your show, Talking Roadmaps, you talk a lot, I think, about how to inject user IDs into roadmaps. And could you explain how you do this, usually, and what roles maybe do certain tools could play in this way you integrate IDs and roadmaps?
So I'll stay away from specific tools because I try to remain tool agnostic in the specific via particular brand. But if we think about tools of the kind of a roadmap is a tool to me. There's typically some sort of idea management process that's going to feed things in. There's usually some sort of user feedback path. These are all data sources that come to the product team to help them make choices. Going out, having those conversations with users is gathering those inputs as well. It's all about trying to capture as much information as you can in as reasonable a time as you can. I think there's a quote from Colin Powell, who was US Secretary of State or something. You've got to act when you've got 70% of the information that you would ideally want. If you wait till 100%, you're going to be late and slow. If you get it less than 40%, then you're just guessing. And that kind of 70% is that magic number. Now, this was the amount of information he was looking for when taking military action. We're not taking military action. People's lives are not on the line. So making a choice to maybe act when we haven't got perfect information, but we've got enough to make a good judgment is a key part of it. And we're trying to inject a user voice. There's a phrase that's fallen out of popularity over the last year: voice of the customer. Product managers are supposed to be that voice of the customer. Maybe designers are supposed to be the voice of the user as well, maybe to try and bring that creative tension in. We're supposed to be the voice of business as well sometimes. Those three voices should be represented in the room and represented on the roadmap, because the roadmap is just an articulation of the direction of travel. It's not this complex, big plan. In fact, I hate the word plan used when we talk about roadmaps. It is a direction of travel. It's making sure we're all on the same journey together. And when I look at my roadmaps, I look at what's on them to bring that customer and user understanding there. Ideally, I'm putting the problems to solve, the jobs to be done, the customer pains, the customer gains. They're the things on my roadmap. The things on my roadmap are not the solutions we're shipping, apart from in the really short term. In the really short time, the things that we might actually worry about are the solutions we're shipping. If we put them on there, great, okay. But that's maybe the next 3 months at most. We've really got the problems there, and we can link those two together. If we know what problem we're solving, that's in the customer's voice or the user's voice. And then the solution we ship is something we're going to work out as we do our discovery. When we've done enough discovery, though, there's no harm in putting the solution on the roadmap, because we've figured it out. We know what we're going to do now. We know what we're going to ship. And that's one of the things I find people struggle with, is that maturity as an organization of seeing the difference between the two types of roadmap, or the two different elements on a roadmap. In the short term, in that now column, or as I prefer to call it, the delivery column, we can put the solutions. In the midterm, or the next column, or the discovery column, as I like to call it, we can put the problems we're going to be solving. And in the long term, the next or the later column, or as I prefer to call it, the explore column, then there we can instead recognize these are the very big areas that we're exploring. These are the big things that we want to know about. And hopefully, we're going out and trying to find the problems that are worth solving in those spaces.
Thank you for sharing all this. It's really beneficial for everyone. I think you change in your career, and you worked with a lot of product teams, and you modify your strategies. Can you tell us about a time when exactly learning from users was really pivotal in making the success or the failure of a specific project?
Maybe I'll do it the opposite of that, of a time where we forgot to learn from the users and therefore it failed.
Okay, let's go with it.
And it's that exact same device that I talked about previously. We made a terrible onboarding process for it. It was fine for us as users who were internal and could kind of tweak it and get it to work. So when we plugged it in, it was fine, and it took a few minutes, but we tolerated it. What we forgot to do is really look at that user journey from a normal customer, someone who's just a car driver who wanted to plug this thing into their car to help with their insurance. And the 5+ minutes it took to onboard was too long. It was painful for them. So a lot of people just didn't finish the onboarding. We got to the point where actually we had a simple design principle in place. We've got to be onboarded in less time than it would take to make an espresso. And we try to express it in those day-to-day terms as well, as opposed to less than 10 seconds, which felt far too precise. Although I think my German colleagues at the time would have preferred that. But I wanted something that was a bit more emotive and human.
Love it. Great. It's really, really interesting. And I love how you ground it with just a everyday life example, like the coffee thing. You often, I think, compare great CEOs to big product managers who lead through influence. In your experience, how vital are effective feedback loops within the organization and outside of the organization in ensuring teams and users and stakeholders in general, even if I don't like this word too much, people in the organization, let's say, support the product roadmap and understand it and understand where the company and the product is going. How important is that in your experience?
So the short answer is it's supremely important. It's like those feedback loops are critical to everything working. Like so much so that when I design roadmaps with people, I use a tool called the Roadmap Audience Canvas, and built into that is essentially a persona. Are the understanding of those feedback loops that are going to go around it? Like, what input are they going to give me, and how am I going to feed back on it? And what output am I going to give to them, and how are they going to feed back to me on it? So we make sure we understand how that's going to work. I want to pick up a point you made there, hitting the word stakeholders though. And you also use the word internal there. Stakeholders aren't all internal. Stakeholders are everybody who has a stake in the outcome of something. So are they going to be impacted by the product? Do they care about the outcome? It could be impacted positive or negatively. Do they care about it? Do they want it to happen? Anyone who has a stake in what it's going to do is a stakeholder. That's a customer, a user, could be a government, as well as your internal people.
It's a great point, and I'm just it's my thing. It's personal. So let's not.
I've seen a lot of people kind of picking up on that point or saying that something similar recently, and I kind of get it, but we haven't got a better word for it. In fact, I was on a call with Marty Kagan literally last week where someone raised this point, and he said, "I've given up on that fight. I might not like the word, but it's here to stay. So let's just get okay with it."
I am. So I use it. I used it too. So I'm guilty. I've charged. Thank you for this one. From your vast experience training teams, right, and across many companies, what routine do you usually instill in product teams to help them try to effectively integrate the continuous discovery into their workflow? Because you mentioned this example, and it was a great example of how on a day-to-day when you were renting car, you would do the discovery. But is there any practice, any methods, any way you do that otherwise?
So the fundamental one is just talking to customers, finding every opportunity, finding anyone who looks like a potential customer. In fact, I think we get hung up on people actually having to be existing real customers, but someone who is in the same segment who looks like a customer is perfectly valid to talk to. A prospect, or even someone who's not going to buy from us, they fit that segment, they fit that profile. We should just talk to them anytime we can. But I also try and set a realistic level of expectation here. If you're in B2C, there are a lot of people you can talk to. So you can be having that conversation once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it is. If you're in B2B, you might not be able to do that. I spent a lot of time in automotive. In automotive, there are 20 car companies in the world, basically. You can't go and talk to someone in the after sales department every week of one of these companies. They'll get annoyed. So you have to be strategic about who you're talking to and when you're talking to and what value you're getting from them. One of my single best discovery activities was a single 4-hour meeting where I flew to Detroit for less than a day and then flew back. 11 super senior people from General Motors were going to spend the afternoon with me. And at the time, my boss didn't want me to go. He was saying, "Where's the project? Where's the ROI?" To me, it's like, well, this is the single biggest client or prospect in our entire industry, and I'm going to find out about their direction of travel for the next 3 to 5 years. And as an organization like GM, frankly, they're planning 3 to 5, possibly even up to 7-year cycles. You can pretty much plan in those long-term ways. And so you could take a lot from that one meeting to make decisions for at least a couple of years, potentially, especially as you've built that rapport and that relationship. And so it's about understanding what is the right way of engaging, what's the right sort of cadence of those interactions. Customer advisory balls can be useful. User advisory balls can be useful. I remember, we must be going back 15 years now. Green vehicles were all the trend. And I'm not talking about Teslas. Tesla didn't exist at this point, really. Maybe it just started. But all the fleets that I was dealing with on a fleet management system were starting to experiment with liquid natural gas, compressed natural gas, hydrogen, electric, etc., etc., etc. And we had a product that was designed to work with diesel and petrol engine vehicles. It was a fleet management. It was tracking the vehicle, but tracking the energy usage, or the fuel usage. We needed to understand what their future fleets were going to look like. Yes, we could have gone and spoken to them all individually, but actually there was a ton of value for them, for us to bring them together, for them to have a common conversation, to understand what each other was doing, because then they got the benefit of each other's learning and each other's thinking. But it gave us the opportunity to understand what that future green fleet was going to look like, to start thinking about how do we prepare our product. And so I guess my point is, it's not one size fits all. It's about thinking about what's the context of your industry. It depends again. And understanding about what's the right cadence and how do we engage to capture that knowledge.
Thank you so much for everything. It was really, really very valuable insights. Talk to people that look like your ICP. Don't necessarily look only at your clients. Even people not buying from your company, it's also a way to gather great insight if they are inside the environment you're looking to care. So thank you so much for everything, for all the answers. And maybe one last thing before we go is I'd like to ask if there is any specific book, any specific resource you would like to share with the audience, maybe something you're reading right now outside of the great book. It depends you're writing.
Sure. Well, as you can tell, I like books. So the one I'm reading right now is called Product-Led Sales by Vincent Young. It's a refreshing take on product-led growth, where actually it looks at the combination of both sales-led and product-led growth together in a very pragmatic way. But I also know in the very near future, I'll be rereading Aligned by Bruce McCarthy and Melissa Rappel, because it comes out in July, in a couple of weeks' time from when we're recording at least. I read it in the beta version, but it's coming out soon, and I know it's going to be awesome. And anyone who's interested in that word stakeholders should go and read it.
Great. So I'm going to grab it as well. Thank you so much, Phil, for this great interview. Wishing you a great day. We'll share your contact information with everyone that wants to connect with you on LinkedIn and gets more of this amazing knowledge. Thank you so much, Phil.
Thanks. Been a pleasure. Have a great day.